Everyone, I'm Mystery.
And I'm Milton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we are the Duality of Man. And this one's a doozy, folks, so I advise you to lie back and think of England. Because Lord knows their politicians certainly aren't for some fucking reason.
Yeah, recently, you know, what's been going on between Elon Musk and the British Prime Minister in Parliament? He's found out about the rape gang scandal that's been going on for decades over in England. This is something that we've already known about for quite some time, but because it's Elon Musk, he's one of the most influential people in the world. Now it's really starting to gain more traction, especially over here in America, and he's like really, really not holding back against the British Parliament, as he shouldn't. Like the people of England should be at this point dragging them from Parliament, and I don't think if I could say it anymore legally,
And,
but
and, and, and go full French, shall we say. What the French usually do when they have a grievance is what England probably should be doing, or at least approaching doing right about now.
it, it's not something I say like just offhand, but the problem, but this is such a pervasive problem, and the government failed to such an egregious extent that simply voting these people out will not, isn't enough justice. Like these people have to be put in jail, and the people who did it have to, like I would say, bring back the death penalty in England. I don't know why they get rid of it in the first place.
Yeah, usually when situations like this happen, the correct response is you must first face the wall and then be thrown into the unmarked grave underneath the jail, as it were. Like that is the proper punishment for something like the Rotherham grooming gangs and so on have been accused of. Shall we say? First they must face the wall, then they must be placed underneath the jail. Jawohl.
So we have this video from Paul Joseph Watson that goes over the Googling scandal and Elon Musk's online battle against the British Parliament. So I'm going to hit play now.
Yep.
Eternity, but the truth has finally been revealed. The true cost of what mass migration has inflicted on the UK. Official statistics: foreigners living in the UK are 3.5 times more likely to be arrested for sexual offences than British citizens. That's odd because all the campaigns highlighting the issue of sexual harassment look like this.
Sweetheart, you alright? You alright, yeah?
Alright, look at the body on that.
And for all
It's like it's a lot like that here in the U.S. Like typical, white guy harassing a girl on the street. It'd be far better. It'd be far more educational if it was a freaking Pakistani man. At least then they know who to look out for.
I mean, I mentioned this before we went on air, but the what is currently going on in England stroke Britain is exactly what it looks like when social justice, neo-Hegelianism, or quote-unquote wokeness have died so long that you would rather allow for child rapists to go free than to break the drawing room decorum around multiculturalism. That is how long these termites have dined on the soul of what used to be the great country of Britain.
Yeah, and people on the left used to go on and on and on about rape culture and how bad men are for sexualizing women and no means no, and then they allow this shit to occur. Like
They
they're the
they
biggest fucking hypocrites in the world.
they also wax lyrical about how awful like authoritarian theocracies are, but suddenly when it's a Muslim instead of a Christian, whistle whistle, nothing to see here. Apparently, it never mind that Islam is one of the most hyper, like, uber traditionalist civilizations on the fucking planet. Never mind that they literally behead people for the sake of sexual crimes. Never mind that they literally would rather women cover themselves in flowing garments from head to toe than allow their men to look at them. But suddenly, when Islam shows, you know, makes makes the Amish look like the freaking Unitarian Universalist we're not allowed to talk about it because they're foreign, third world, and brown, so they get special treatment somehow.
Yeah, and you want to talk about racism. The girls they targeted were specifically targeted because they were English and non-Muslim. Like this was a racist hate crime.
Well, I'm not sure about the race component. I think it might just be because they weren't covering themselves up like good little Muslim girls that it was the issue.
They mentioned it specifically in like I think numerous testimonies that they were targeted because they were white English girls.
Okay, well then fuck them also entirely, because even though Islam is a backwards theocratic bullshit religion, obviously hashtag not all, but even though Muslim is like that, or Islam is like that, they usually don't care much about the ethnicity of given foreigners. They care about whether they adhere to the religion or not. It's usually, like, again, I'm obviously coming at it from the outside looking in, but as someone who has looked with some detail on like Islamic beliefs and so on, you're not supposed to care about the race of the person. You're supposed to care about the ideological adherence of the person. Now, in either case, fuck you, because your ideology very often is theocratic nonsense. But at the very least, if they cared more about the ideologies of the girls, they would at least be being consistent with their religion.
Well, no, that's probably an idea that's coming from Islamic theological scholars. But do you really think your average criminal bastard on the street is gonna make that distinction?
No, and it must be said that we're not getting the best of the Muslim world imported via Europe and eventually also here. Um, we normally the people who get, forced immigrated out of their country are the people so crazy that not even the establishment of their own countries want them anymore. Like hashtag they are not sending their best. They're sending the people that they can't control, that are so crazy that they can't control them and don't want to deal with them anymore. And
Yeah.
yet we're racist or chauvinist or um fucking colonialist if we bother to close and vet the borders so as to avoid terrorists so bad that even Al Qaeda and ISIS look at them and go, "You are going a little bit too rich for our blood. Get the fuck out."
Yeah. Obviously, as African American, I have some very strong thoughts against racism. But goddamn it, Dalton, if there was ever a reason for somebody to be racist against somebody else, this would be this would be one of the fucking reasons.
Yeah, and again, like, you don't really even have to focus on the race issue if you don't want to. How about we vet them on the basis that they're authoritarian theocrats who want to burn Western civilization to the ground? That should be enough, but apparently it's so much not enough that we have to let them get away with underage grooming scandals and so forth. God damn it. Because we would rather excuse their rapiness on the ground that they're third world, foreign, and brown than ever consider breaking the drawing room decorum around multiculturalism. Apparently,
Plaga.
yeah.
Crimes, foreign nationals were arrested at twice the rate of British citizens. The top arrest rates by nationality, soaring in at number 1 is Albania, a country starved of genuine achievements, but this is probably not the title they'd wished for. And then Afghanistan, Iraq, Algeria, Congo, Morocco, Somalia, Eritrea, Iran.
How do you get those kinds of numbers and then still argue for an open fucking border?
Because the people arguing for open borders care so much more about abstract morality that they would rather watch the world burn around them than ever consider that there might be a reality outside of their bubble that needs to be considered or served. I mean, we call them luxury beliefs for a reason. It is because only the people who can afford to insulate themselves from the sheer stupidity of their own beliefs can hold these beliefs.
I mean, we see that here in the U.S. when they were arguing there was only a handful of apartment buildings that were being taken over by South American violent gangs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is England needs a fucking reconquista. I swear to God.
Like, do we as the prodigal son of the Anglosphere go back over and and reintroduce classical liberalism back to England again? Because they appear to have contracted a terminal case of authoritarian theocracy import. So maybe we as the prodigal son should put Grandpa in a home, as it were, and reconquer England for the sake of English values.
All right, England, we're in charge now. And when they ask why, it says, well, because you're falling apart and your government is very clearly betrayed you. And two, you yourselves appear to not do it due to the fact that you haven't had a 1776 yet. Like, we declared war and independence over less atrocities than this.
Yeah. And by the way, England, in this metaphor, there's a reason I specified putting you in a home, because whatever animistic spirit undertones the British people appears to have just caught dementia or brain cancer so severe that they are having hallucinations and shit.
Yeah,
Because apparently Tommy Robinson is terrible, no good right wing person, but the third world theocrats who literally want to have women covered up and men enslaved to do whatsoever their religion requires of them apparently aren't in any way right wing, even though that's normally how you define it, apparently.
yeah. Like, I don't know what the British people are thinking. Like, are they just maybe trying to put their heads down and hoping that this will someday end? You can't keep calm and carry on your way out of this, people. At some point, you're going to have to take actions into your own
Well,
hands.
I think that is part of it. I think so much of the British psyche is all about civility, decorum, and keeping calm and carrying on. That they simply don't know how to do the French model of revolution anymore. Not saying that we need to go quite that far, but still, like, at some point, the fucking lace gloves have to come off, Britain, and if we as proud Americans have to teach our granddad how to fucking hold his own again, then so be it. We will conquer you for your own safety. Honestly, is where I'm sitting with this.
Yes. We will grant them their independence eventually, but only after they have been thoroughly indoctrinated to not put up with insane shit like this.
Yeah, it's freaking ridiculous. Anyway, on with the video.
All reinforcing the maxim that diversity is indeed our greatest strength. And don't forget, these
I don't. Quick question: are you hearing any roboting, or is it just me?
I think it's just you. It's coming through to me fine.
All right, hold on. Let me show them real quick.
figures don't even include migrant background individuals. You include those and the numbers are likely to be bordering on catastrophic. 48 nationalities living in the UK have a higher arrest rate than British citizens. And when you focus on certain regions, the situation is even more alarming. In Greater London, 39.2% of sex crime arrests are foreign nationals. In the West Midlands, it's 38.8%. In Derbyshire, it's 44.8%. And in the City of London, it's a whopping 66.9%. More than 2/3 of arrests for sexual offences are foreign nationals.
And guys, you don't have to actually kill them in order to get rid of them. You just need to enforce your goddamn borders and enforce, like, legal fucking migration, for God's sake.
To be fair, though, if you did execute the ones responsible for this, I'm pretty sure a lot of the boats would stop.
Well, yes, but also we all know that there are some things beyond the pale, and mass child rape is one of those. I'm sorry, there is no further discussion. You must please face the wall now. Sorts of things. So that be as it may, but because I know I'm talking to the English, and the English do like their fucking civilized drawing room decorum and so on. Um, all you need to do is fucking repatriate the ones who have so thoroughly fucked up. And then the other ones will actually probably feel safer because so many of the actual legal migrants to the UK came to the UK because they wanted to live in a society like the UK, only to find that the worst, like, organized criminals from their own home countries have already beaten them here and thus basically turned inner cities in Britain into fucking conquered colonies to whichever Middle Eastern state they happen to have come from.
Yeah,
And that doesn't strike me to be good for the migrants who actually came to England because they wanted to be English or live in a multicultural society like England, and so on.
This isn't even England anymore. It's fucking Anglo-Stan.
Literally, and sadly enough, now we've started getting it so that there are literal terrorists coming in from our southern border, which I wouldn't have put money on 5 or 6 years ago, just on the basis that I would have thought that the Latino migrants would have been an issue before the Muslim ones. But as it turns out, when you believe in a religion that hasn't matured since the fucking Dark Ages, wherever they go, they tend to bring the Dark Ages with them in various degrees.
Like, I expected the Biden administration to be bad. I was in no way prepared for how bad.
And again, same thing with our British brothers and sisters. All we have to do is enforce the laws as they stand, and we could solve this problem. It doesn't have to be this way, God damn it.
And these numbers are only going to get worse as we import close to 1 million net migrants every year. The thing about those statistics coming out today about foreigners and sex crimes is that the British state already had that data, and yet the flow of foreigners coming in only ever increased. It can no longer be denied. Mass migration has made the UK increasingly unsafe for women and girls. The statistics only underline what women who've experienced that strange form of cultural enrichment have been warning us about for years.
I've been living in London for 10 years. I've also lived in multiple other countries.
For the sake of consistency and principles here, it hasn't gotten good for the men either, Paul. Like, I know think of the women's is the easiest way to play on people's heartstrings and shit, but men and boys are also getting royally fucked, both literally and metaphorically, by the situation. Because I really doubt that the culture that allows their own men to blow themselves the fuck up has much sympathy for men who aren't even in their fucking religion. For all that the Muslim world is oppressive for women and girls, it is just as, if not more, oppressive towards men and boys. Or do you think that men should be arbitrarily blowing themselves up for the sake of ideology and morality, Paul?
No, I wouldn't even consider the religion the worst part. I think the worst thing would be is, as a man, like, you want to protect your family, and then you're reduced to absolute powerlessness as your daughter or niece or whatever is brutally assaulted, and you can't do anything because the state will throw your ass in jail if you attempt to.
And moreover, need I remind everyone that the Muslim world is where we get the concept of lady boys from, i.e. the idea of young boys who are castrated and forced to dress like women until puberty kicks in, at which point they are usually violently disposed of. And if they're lucky, they might live long enough to groom and indoctrinate the next generation of ladyboys. So, again, we are at the end of the day a men's rights podcast, and I will like to point out to everyone that don't ever let anyone tell you it's just the women who suffer in the Muslim world.
Yeah,
they hate or don't give a shit about men just as much as we do. They just operate it differently.
That kind of thing was going on in Afghanistan, and I believe U.S. soldiers were told to overlook it, and a lot of soldiers were like extremely upset and disturbed because obviously this is a horrible practice going on to like young boys, and like they can't do anything about it. They could do something about it. They were told not to do anything about it.
Yeah, so the boys who look too feminine get ladyboyed, and the boys who don't look too feminine are taught to disregard their own humanity to such a meaningful degree that they will literally blow themselves up for the sake of Allah and the women's derp.
Countries around the world. Never before have I felt as unsafe as I do now. When I walk down the street, I'm increasingly being leered at. I'm increasingly being followed like I'm going around the souks of Morocco. And it's not visibly to me anyway, people who were born and bred here. It isn't. And it's very difficult because we're not allowed to talk about it because, oh my gosh, that breaks taboo. Oh, you're a racist if you say this. I'm sorry. A lot of women going about their daily business feel that their safety is being directly threatened by people who are coming from different cultures. And this needs to be discussed because I've had enough. All my other female friends have had enough. When I put this stuff online, the number of comments online from other women saying they've had enough and saying thank you for talking about this.
Call me crazy, but I'm starting to think that Deliveroo and Uber Eats weren't worth it. Joe.
Also, one small detail here: the more jobs taken by said third world theocrats, the fewer jobs that the actual native English working class have. That's part one, and part two is once again that imagine being a gay person born in the Muslim world, escaping to England, only to find out that the people who will throw you off a bridge or castrate you have already come here, and they're still going to gun for you.
Yes, and have been given legal protection.
Because we would rather allow people of Middle Eastern descent who came to England for the purposes of being English in the hopes that it will offer them a better life. We would rather let those people die at the hands of their own former countrymen that acknowledge that maybe the authoritarian theocracy that hasn't matured since the Middle Ages shouldn't be a good basis for integrating into a westernized society.
Yeah. And you were talking about the labor market. Let's also talk about the housing market, because all these people coming in, they have to live somewhere, and so now they're competing with native-born English people for homes, for apartments. There's this thing called council housing, which I believe is which I believe be the equivalent of Section 8 here in America, and they're taking up the majority of that as well. So English people are, struggling to expand and find their own place to live, and they have like an entire other population now to compete with.
Let alone the fact that a lot of migrants, once they get here, are put up in 5- and 4-star hotels on the taxpayer's dime. Meanwhile, the native-born homeless in England can kick rocks, I suppose. You're not third world and brown, mate, so you're nicked, apparently. Like that. And I said the same thing back on election night when we were watching the Archcast. Why are we so careless about importing new people when there are still native-born fucking Americans who have it hard, and in this case, native-born Brits who have it hard? Do you think importing more people who will A, become criminal, B, become homeless, helps the homeless natives of the fair isle known as Britain? Or does it in fact make the lives of the homeless of Britain much worse? Because now, if they look at the wrong person the wrong way, they're going to get shivved to death with fucking Arabic swords and shite.
I know that something needs to be done to just do the English people themselves have the will to do it. Because one of the things that's been going on in the news is that British politicians have been complaining more about Elon Musk talking about the scandal than the actual scandal itself.
Because how dare the based oligarch continue to be publicly based? That might convince other people it's okay to be based, and then we'll have to deal with the repercussions of that derp.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons why they covered this up is they wanted to maintain the illusion of a working multicultural society, which does not work. And now that people know the extent of which they covered it up to try and maintain this false image, like England is becoming an absolute embarrassment internationally.
And again, they would rather avoid the shame of being referred to as racist than deal with the fact that they are allowing people who rape children to get off scot-free. And I'm sorry, but that is proof that your moral compass has become so warped that it now might as well have been drawn by Salvador Dali from Bizarro World. Like, I'm sorry, but I will die on this hill. Group child rape is about the worst thing a human being can do to another human being. And the only correct answer is please face the wall now. And then later on be shoved into the unmarked grave underneath the rest of the jail.
Yes, and if the British politicians are so worried about their international reputation, I wonder how they view now being seen as a bunch of moronic, pathetic conquered losers.
Well, I mean, they've been that way since like at least 2013, and it's taken this long to even get this far. Which again, thanks, based oligarch, for being as vocal about this as you want to, because nobody's going to be able to shut Elon up, fortunately.
Well, it's got a lot of traction in the UK, but it's never gotten this much traction in America.
Which, yeah, that's again, maybe we should pay back all the great things we got from jolly old England back in the day by reconquering the spirit of England and putting it in a home.
When all right, I'm gonna play again.
Yep.
Oh, Rogan, known for being in great shape for his age, he bounced back from COVID in just a few days, so you know he takes care of himself. One of the supplements Rogan's talked about is
Skip the ad.
but rather than me explain its benefits, I'm going to let the doctor that discovered it fill you in. It's in NAD+, which starts firing up those abilities you had issue by Elon Musk for over a week, essentially said that anyone concerned about the industrial scale grooming, exploitation and rape of young girls by predominantly Pakistani men is basically just a far-right bigot.
And when politicians, and I mean politicians, who sat in government for many years, are casual about honesty, decency, truth and the rule of law, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right, then that affects politics.
Starmer's not exactly keen on investigating the subject, given that under his leadership,
Literally everything I don't like is far right.
You would rather believe that, or you would rather allow these exploits to continue than to give your opponents an abstract moral victory. How much of an aristocratic toff could you possibly be? Yes, I know I'm allowing people to get away with child rape and whatnot else, but if I admit to doing that thing, that will make my opponent's argument stronger, and therefore we will maintain as much drawing room decorum as we have to avoid giving my enemies the appropriate leverage. Also, and again, because, you know, men's rights and all, I would be curious to know how many young boys were raped by said grooming gangs? Because I don't think the answer is none, or even a small percentage. Given what we know they get up to in, prisons, and we know what they get up to with regards to ladyboys, I very much doubt young boys are going unmolested by this situation. So, yes, obviously have sympathy for the girls and whatnot, but most people don't need to be told to have sympathy for the girls. So I'm just going to sit here and remind everyone, boys and men too, ?
Yeah, but they recently held a vote. Did you see the vote they recently had in Parliament?
I did not. I might have heard something about it, but I didn't see anything about the particulars.
Yeah, well, there was a vote about whether or not they should do an inquiry, like an inquiry into the grooming gangs, which, frankly, they've had multiple inquiries into it already, and nothing has come of it. What they need is action. But they voted on this inquiry, and I think every single Labour member of Parliament voted no because Kier Starmer threatened to kick them out of the party if they voted yes.
I'm sorry, if you're a Labour, if the integrity of your party is more important than actually being electable, then I hope someone made a note of this so that when Labour's 5-year term is up 4 or so years from now, the Labour can be proportionately punished. And by the way, no, it's not good enough to simply give the Tories back the main seat of power. Basically, everyone should vote for a party that is neither the Tories nor Labour to hopefully break up the establishment blockade that is the British legal system, or political system, rather.
Well, we've had a similar thing here in America. There was a bill that was in, I believe, there's a bill that was in Congress, and about deporting illegal immigrants who have been charged with a violent crime, and I think 150 something Democrats voted against it.
And they wonder why the MAGA movement is preferable to the current establishment of either party.
John Fetterman, the senator from our state, said that if they can't even vote in favor of this bill, then that is exactly why they lost. And he's absolutely right. Ironically, his brain injury has made him more based.
Also, yeah, while we're on this subject, the man with multiple strokes under his belt is speaking more sense than the average Democrat. Does that seem right to anyone else? Because doesn't seem right to me, but again, I don't get votes on this particular topic, I guess.
I think the main difference between Fetterman and the rest of the people in Congress is that he appears to actually give a damn about the people who elected him.
Which, I mean, is fair. Doesn't mean that I think he should have been elected in the first place, though, because especially after going through several strokes and barely being able to string a sentence together, I'm sorry, but he should not be in office to begin with.
I mean, at the time of running, he was in no shape to be a senator.
Yeah. It's only out of TDS and the fact that Trump had endorsed the other candidate that he did win, I'm thinking. Anyway, on with the video.
EPS failed to prosecute many of these grooming gang ringleaders.
Critics will say it's not a far-right bandwagon issue, Prime Minister. The ICSA report looked at just 6 towns where grooming gangs were operating. Rochdale got one mention in 400 pages. We have found that GB News court report showing gangs operating in 50 towns across the country. Are you certain, as Prime Minister, it's not going on today? Why don't you order a national public inquiry to join the dots between 50 towns, not 6, barely mentioned in the J report? Are you afraid it might expose failings as your role as a DPP? And that's why Elon Musk says, were you complicit in the rape of Britain? You have not. To go after the far right on this does not go to the heart of the problem.
Starmer's CP.
Is it just me, or did he seem incredibly nervous while the guy was talking?
Well, I should fucking think so. If I were a politician and I had done something this heinous, I'd be quite nervous too, because typically this kind of behavior from a politician is the kind of behavior that winds up with one's head in a basket in a sane world. And yet this has been going on for a decade and some change.
Thinking about what I would do if I was in his position, I find myself coming to the realization that I would never be in his position because there are some things that I simply am incapable of.
The lines that simply should not be crossed, kind of thing.
Yeah, and allowing this type of atrocity to occur and do nothing, and let alone not do nothing but cover it up. Like, I am not capable of such an action, so I don't know how he would feel in that situation.
One wonders, and it must be said, Labour were not in power for most of the actual time that the scandal was going on. It must be said that the Conservative Party is just as, if not more, guilty. But surely somebody should do something, and neither establishment party within the UK is doing a damn thing, and Nigel Farage over in Reform is too busy disavowing Elon Musk and disavowing Tommy Robinson to actually heed the words of his base. So somebody needs to form a different fucking party, because apparently even Nigel Farage is utterly useless on this vector, apparently.
Well, a great deal of it did occur under considerable leadership, but I remember seeing a report that the first instances of this being reported was under Labour Prime Minister, I believe, Gordon Brown. So so they knew about this for like quite a long time and did nothing. And the Conservatives who knew about this for quite a long time and did nothing should also be dragged out and put on trial.
Yeah, again, it's less of a Labour versus Conservative thing, and more the establishment of both parties have proven themselves to be utterly and uselessly incompetent. So, given how England's first past and post thing works over there, guys, every person who lives in England today should, come the next voting round, vote for literally every party except the Tories or Labour. So that the establishment has to come to terms with the fact of how deeply and longly they have fucked up.
Yeah, and I just want to make one clarification. When we say the UK Conservative Party are much, much more left-leaning than the Republicans here in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the stuff that they did were almost in lockstep with what the Democrats were talking about here in America.
And let's not even talk about Labour, because Jeremy Corbyn makes Bernie Sanders look like a rhino.
Yeah. So, like, between their two major parties, like, England didn't really have a lot of hope in stopping this. Well, they could have, but not like the politicians doing anything about it.
And at least some of the blame has to be leveled at Reform, mostly Nigel Farage, for instead of building a coalition with the likes of Elon Musk and Tommy Robinson, Nigel has started drawing room decoruming the shit out of Tommy Robinson and Elon Musk and disavowing them, which in turn means that Reform has now basically renounced and denounced their entire base. So those who voted for Reform in the last election need to find a new party with which to identify. I would maybe suggest getting Gerald Batten back from UKIP, and maybe this time, instead of disavowing the likes of Sargon and Dankula, they should make Sargon and Dankula the poster children for their party. Because someone has to start making the populist maneuvers a thing, or 10 years from now, I'm not sure that England will even be a country.
Yeah, let me ask you something. If someone offered you a trip to England right now, would you go?
No, I would not, because all the things I like about England, all the things that make me an Anglophile, are being slowly but surely eroded by inner city little Pakistans and little Irans and so on. So there isn't much left of the Britain that I would actually want to go to in most of these places. Maybe some places out in the countryside there might still be a little bit of England left over, but anywhere near a city is basically slowly but surely turning into Anglistan, as you put it.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't want to go either. Like, I've loved England for a long time, and I've always wanted to go there, admire the culture, admire the history. But you couldn't get me over there right now. Like the state it's in, like a lot of English people are frankly sick of it, and a lot of them are looking to maybe move somewhere else. There are still a lot of people that want to stay there and fight for their country, which they should. And they need more people like that.
Yeah, correct
But
and
if,
based.
yeah, but if a lot of them like just got up and like moved somewhere else, I could not blame them at all.
Yeah, and by the way, if any of you all need a place to flee to, may I suggest American? May I suggest becoming an American? Because we figured this out several centuries ago. That's why we don't have to deal with this shit no more, for the most part. We told you that monarchy thing was going to bite you in the ass eventually. We told you Parliament were a bunch of wastrels.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, unfortunately, we had a media that was so efficient at gaslighting that they brought in a corpse puppet. Until now, we still have to clean up that fucking mess.
But again, I put it to you, my brothers over across the pond there. You'd much rather be living under a Trump presidency and then probably a Vance presidency shortly after that than you would be under Kier Starmer. So there's that.
Hit play again.
Yep.
PS failed to prosecute, despite in some cases literally finding the DNA of the accused in the victim's underwear.
All right, there is literally no justification for not prosecuting that crime. Holy shit.
Yeah, like, I mean, especially if the victim is underage, because even if there was something adjacent to consent there, that consent is invalid if they're underage and shit.
I think they actually addressed that later in this video, but it's like you literally have all the evidence you could possibly ask for in order to get a conviction. And at that point, you don't prosecute a person. It's nothing but willful compliance with the rape of a young girl. You there? Dalton? Yeah, I think Dalton's frozen. I'm gonna give him a minute to come back here. Yeah, so I've been hearing about these stories from England for I've been hearing about these stories from England for quite a long time now, and it always amazed me how the men of these countries, the fathers, obviously a lot of them tried to stand up and get something done, and they should be applauded for that. But the government stopped them from being able to protect their children. But when you consider it, there's a hell of a lot more, dads out there who probably want to protect their daughters than there are, police. So at some point, you have to stop complying with these people. When the authorities in your country fail in their duty to protect you, in my opinion, that authority becomes utterly invalid. So, like, I fully support like the people of England. Like, they say that people shouldn't take law into their own hands, but the law has failed these people on every conceivable metric. And so, back?
Yeah, sorry, folks, my phone died. My charger is at that annoying phase where it only wants to charge at specific angles, and I wasn't paying close enough attention to the angle. I will try to stay on as long as I can. if I dip out again, that is probably what happened. Anyway, on with the lying back and thinking of England, because apparently their politicians won't.
Those that are spreading lies and misinformation as far and as wide as possible. They're not interested in victims. They're interested in themselves.
The absolute nerve of Starmer to claim that people are just pretending to be outraged about this and they don't really care about the victims. When Labour councils were directly in.
But even if that were the case, which it isn't, but let's play the ball where it lies for a second. Even if they were only complaining about it for self-interested reasons, are we going to sit here and pretend like self-interested reasoning is enough to poison the well so badly that makes letting this continue unabated okay? I don't care if the person who gives to charity is doing so for self-interested reasons, or the person who is, persecuting pedos for self-interested reasons. One, self-interest isn't in and of itself a sin, and two, if the end results are good objectively, then who the fuck cares what motivates the person?
Yeah, and I don't understand how he's saying that people are doing it out of their own self-interest, because a lot of the people talking about this are Americans, and what could we possibly have to gain? Like, this isn't happening in our country. Like, we don't have a dog in this fight. We're just shocked and appalled by the barbaric things that are happening over in the UK, a country that we feel a close kinship to because of the origins of America, and we are stunned how their government could possibly allow this to continue for so long, and even go so far as an attempt to cover up and help the perpetrators. Like, that's what's going on here. It's just shock and disgust at what's happened.
And again, even if it were self-interested, what in the fuck does that matter? Especially when, given the reasoning behind most of the established politicians in the UK is something along the lines of, we would rather allow this crime to continue unabated than possibly be called racist or xenophobic or whatever the fuck. Then I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, that if that is the actual motivation for most of the UK's politicians to cover this shit up, then right here we have a perfect example of what is known as pathological altruism. When your hatred of xenophobia goes so far that it results in you harming yourselves and your fellow countrymen, then surely this is the point at which the lack of self-interest goes too far. Like, I admit there are certain cases where self-interest can become pathological, but are we just going to pretend that altruism never has the potential to become pathological? Because surely if pathological altruism was to be shown anywhere, right here is probably the example. If you fear and hate the accusation of xenophobia so hard that you end up hurting your own countrymen, then you have pathological altruism. There is no better way to put it, honestly.
Involved in covering up the scandal from the late 90s onwards, when Labour's cover-up ensured that victims of the Rotherham grooming gang and others were ignored or silenced, because the government thought preserving the image of the UK as a successful multicultural society was more important than obtaining justice for the victims. In some instances, authorities even sided with the abusers because prosecuting them would have been seen as politically incorrect. In some cases, police even arrested the parents of the girls who were being trafficked and abused. And
I would love to understand what the hell they could possibly be charged with to be arrested for attempting to stop a crime.
Probably something along the lines of prejudice against a minority group or xenophobia or something. Essentially, a racial and or cultural hate crime is what I'm betting. Because again, we're dealing with people whose altruism is so pathological that they would literally allow their own children to be raped, then acknowledge that maybe approaching third world theocrats with drawing room decorum is not the most effective of methods with which to engage with them. Just food for thought, guys. When you're defending child rapists, you done fucked up. Especially if you're allowing your own people to be victimized as a result of that defense of child rapists.
All right.
Labour Prime Minister Gordon Brown allegedly told police to deliberately ignore the issue because the girls had chosen to be abused.
My name is Leon Muller. I'm an ex-police officer. Former Chief Crown Prosecutor Mr. Nasir Afwaz stated in an interview to the BBC Radio 4 that in 2008, the Labour government under Prime Minister Gordon Brown and Home Secretary Jackie Smith sent a circular to all police forces in this country saying that as far as these young girls who are being exploited in town, we believe that they have made an informed choice about their sexual behavior.
Okay. I have a question, and it may come off as a very stupid question, but I just want to understand something. Okay. Isn't there a subset of social justice ideologies that will flip absolute shit over the concept of victim blaming?
Yeah.
As far as I was aware, that was a axiom of like social justice woke type thinking. And holy fucking shit, if this doesn't count as victim blaming, I don't know what the fuck does.
I mean, this is the very definition of victim blaming. And not only that, like, they're children. They can't make an informed choice because they're fucking children.
Yeah, they don't have the cognition necessary, by and large, to make such decisions for themselves. That's why child fiddling is one of the worst crimes that can be reasonably committed, because you're dealing with someone who literally does not have the mental or physical capacity to engage in this situation, and this situation is being forced upon them. It is the ultimate violation of John Stuart Mill's harm principle, which used to be something that England, prided itself on and whatever the fuck. So, once again, I must ask, how long have the termites dined when you would rather allow this to occur than to potentially be accused of racism or cultural insensitivity? Do you think your priorities are in the right order there? Child rape is now below being shamed by calling you a rapist or a racist or a culturally insensitive bigot.
So let me ask you something, Dalton. Like, at a certain point, when the law fails this egregiously, at a certain point, does it become justified to take the law in someone's own hands? Like, again, we're talking about the defense of young women against grown men gang raping them.
The only problem there is the second people start doing that is the second that the journalists will swarm it like blood in the water to make a far right narrative.
Yeah, but they're journalists. Who cares what they think?
Okay, but the problem is the politicians and the people in power are the only people who take journalists seriously, and will thereby probably enact some sort of martial law to prevent the right-wingers, quote-unquote, from engaging in what begins with the word lynch and ends with the word mob, most likely.
There are more citizens than there are politicians.
Right, until the military hardware of England is forced down the throats of its own citizenry.
Well, I know the police are a bunch of fucking, goose-stepping pseudo-Germans, but do you really think that the military, like a lot of the military guys come from these small towns where these things were occurring? Do you really think they would turn them on their own families and neighbors?
No, but then again, how long have the termites dined is the question. How many of those people upon refusing to turn their weapons on their own families, will be court-martialed and thrown into whatever the British equivalent of Gitmo is.
Possibly. Like, I'm not usually in favor of people taking the law into their own hands, but the thing is, like, this was such an egregious crime for so long, with such massive failures from government that
they don't have an outlet politically. But the last port of call was Reform and Nigel Farage, and apparently Reform and Nigel Farage would rather shame and shun people like Tommy Robinson and Elon Musk than to serve their own actual base. So unless Gerald Batten and company want to take a swing at bringing UKIP back, probably with the assistance of people like Tommy Robinson and so on, I don't see the democratically acceptable TM way for England to restore any kind of order. And Lord knows King Charles is a 70-year-old vegetable to begin with, so doubt that good old king and country is going to come to their aid much either. Like, the British people have their backs against the wall and nowhere else to go, honestly.
Perhaps we should just conquer England.
Yeah, it's time to, in the name of the once great country of Britain, reconquer Britain and make it a vassal state of America. Because when your parent becomes so senile that they start hurting themselves, is the time where you gain power of attorney over them and put them in a home for their own safety. And we, as Americans, as the cultural children of England, should do that for our granddad, because he started cutting himself, metaphorically speaking, and it's a shame to watch.
All right, go ahead and play again.
Yep. The sound isn't coming through on my end. I'm not sure what the deal is there.
I don't.
Can you hear it? Is the question.
I can hear it. Yes.
Okay. I will then dip out and come back in, and we'll see if that fixes it.
All right. I'll give you a second.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to play again. Let me know if you can hear something.
All right.
That's why they're blocking a new inquiry.
There we go. We're good.
All right.
Because they were complicit in it from the very beginning. And now they're trying to deflect the anger by monstering Elon Musk for merely talking about it. People are demanding a new inquiry, but what exactly will that accomplish? Another opportunity for the political establishment to cover it all up? When will the conversation shift to re-migration, to sending home the 10,000 foreign criminals currently in UK prisons? Sweden's doing it. They now have a net outflow of migration. And just over the weekend, the German government signaled it was about to do it too, remigrating nearly 500,000 Syrians who are not in employment and are on state benefits. If two of the most liberal countries on the planet when it comes to open borders can change course, can turn to remigration when it's the only feasible solution to the utter mess that's been visited on us as a result of mass migration, when polls show a full set.
So,
yep.
Good for Sweden.
Yeah, no arguments here, although Britain, I'd like to put this in perspective for you. You are losing the sovereignty game to Sweden. Think about that, will you? The country that literally has red light districts is more sovereign and stable than y'all.
Yeah. So the more I think about what England can do in order to get themselves out of this situation, the more depressed I get about the situation.
I would say Nigel, but again, Nigel is too busy disavowing Tommy Robinson and Elon Musk and thereby disavowing basically his entire base. So wait for the next slightly more radical and slightly more based version of Nigel Farage, I suppose. It's the only like political. Again, I guess we should dust UKIP out of mothballs and try putting that forward, because Reform apparently hates its own base so badly that even though siding with Tommy Robinson would be the easiest victory moment in British political history, Nigel isn't willing to do it, apparently.
70% of Brits think migration is too high. Why can't we do it too?
I'm surprised it's that low, honestly. Like, at this point, I'm surprised we haven't literally broken into like 2/3 of the country, which would, I think, be 75%.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you mentioned, this might just be the keep calm and carry on mentality that
just lie back, think of England, and soldier on through. Well, unfortunately, you can't do that unless your own politicians start lying back and thinking of England, and they appear to want to think of just about everyone and anyone but their own citizenry.
So, like, regarding the war with Elon Musk, do you think that Elon's influence is actually going to be able to move people to action and actually get some things done?
I certainly hope so, and Elon is certainly bright enough and well connected enough and financially stable enough to forge something like that. My only question is, how do you beat the first past post system? Because had the UK run like America does in the previous election cycle, Nigel Farage would have been prime fucking minister, because Reform, like, on the ground, took a lot of ground away from both the Labour and the Tories. But because of the first past post system, people's desire to punish the Tories landed us in a Labour government. Or landed them, I should say, in a Labour government. So the only real, like, active solution to the political problems created by first past post is for literally everyone in the country to vote for any set of parties except Labour or the Tories. And with Nigel currently shooting his political career in the foot, the only real solution, I would say, is bring back something like UKIP or the ADL and have them be put in charge.
I don't know. Like, the ADL has been branded a hate group by a lot of organizations, so even if it were to come back, I don't know, like, if it would garner enough support.
Well, but that's the thing. At this point, every vector of the establishment is against you, including the formerly populist, formerly grassroots one. So the only other solution is to vote for people who will burn the country to like burn the political establishment to the ground and hope that something better can rise from the ashes. So unless every person in the country is willing and able to vote for everyone except the Tories and Reform, they're never going to get the lesson. Because what I fear is going to happen is 4 or so years from now, there's going to be a similar landslide against Labour and in favor of the Tories, and then we're right back to where we started with the likes of Theresa May and Boris Johnson. So the only way out of this clusterfuck inside the first past post system is if everyone in Britain ranks every party except the Tories and Labour above Tories and Labour in their voting. And then maybe you'll be able to work your way out of the establishment gridlock. Because there will be so much non-Tory, non-Labour representation that Tory and Labour will finally get the message of, oh, it's the establishment elitism and the bureaucratic quasi quasi-elitism thing that's the problem. And even then, I'm not sure it will get through, because as we saw, apparently Nigel considers himself more of a statesman than a populist, because if he considered himself more of a populist than a statesman, he would have welcomed Tommy and company with open arms. But he didn't.
I think maybe Nigel is just afraid that people. Tommy Robinson has gotten a really bad rap in the media, and so maybe Nigel's afraid of, damaging his chances of becoming PM if he associates with Robertson. Because even though Robertson didn't like to fight back against this stuff, like the media in UK has done like an incredible job, like trying to smear this man in the name.
Well, okay, Nige, how many hit pieces have been written on you or Gerald Batten or any of the other like actual like grassroots populist right or left wing parties in the UK? It's not like Nigel Farage is unfamiliar with the barrage of hit pieces from the media, and it's not like he doesn't. Or at least in theory, he should understand that being an anti-establishment pariah is exactly what makes him popular. Trying to play the drawing room decorum game is going to do nothing but piss off your own base, because whether it be in America, whether it be in Britain, whether it be in France, Germany, Eastern Europe, wherever, everyone and their dog is fucking sick of the establishment bureaucracy and the freaking political drawing room decorum. We want populism, we want libertarianism, and we want these things now, god damn it. The post-war consensus must crumble, and the establishments created by that post-war consensus must crumble if European culture is to survive at all. Because I know Russia and China are both circling their respective drains too, but at this point it feels like a race to the bottom. Whose civilization can avoid crumbling just long enough to build the world that tomorrow will bring?
Well, hopefully with Sir Donald of Orange, America will at the very least be able to claw its way back up.
Yeah,
and Canada might be able to claw its way back up too.
Who is replacing Trudeau as prime minister?
I believe it's Pierre something. I believe his name is French, so
Pierre Poilievre.
Yes, I believe that's him.
Excellent. He is basically the Canadian. He is basically the Canadian Trump. So that's good news.
But let's wrap this up. I've been Mystery.
I have been Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator. Lie back and think of England, and we will see y'all next time. Cheers, guys.
Goodbye, everybody.